Is owned and operated by MCCO LLC, a privately held Texas corporation.
When you went car shopping, you meant business. You aced vehicle history searches and test drives. Now you've got your wheels. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
A tropical storm off the Pacific coast brought cooler temperatures and much-needed rain to Southern California on Saturday, ending a scorching heat wave and easing fears that a massive wildfire could threaten more residents.
Officials had warned that high winds from the remnants of Tropical Storm Kay could fan the flames of the Fairview Fire, which as of Friday had consumed about 27,000 acres in Riverside County, east of Los Angeles, and was only 5% contained. Heavy rain from the storm, meanwhile, raised the possibility of flash flooding and mudslides.
A Black Hawk helicopter crashed during a Taliban training exercise in Afghan's capital Kabul, killing 3, a group's defense ministry said on Saturday.
An American Black Hawk helicopter, which was flown for training, crashed due to a technical problem inside the campus of the National Defense University, said Ministry of Defense spokesperson Anatoly Kharazmi, adding 5 people were also injured. Michael Patterson reporting.
France, Britain, and Germany on Saturday said they have serious doubts about Iran's intentions to revive a nuclear deal, comments that were rejected by Tehran and called very untimely by Moscow.
The IAEA's Board of Governors meet on Monday, 3 months after adopting a resolution urging Iran to give credible answers to the watchdog on the issue. Ahead of that meeting, the European parties to the deal vented their frustration.
Russia's defense ministry announced Saturday that it was pulling back troops from 2 areas in Ukraine's eastern Kharkiv region, where a Ukrainian counteroffensive had made significant advances in the past week.
The news came after days of apparent advances by Ukraine south of Kharkiv, the country's second-largest city, in what could become the biggest battlefield success for Ukrainian forces since they thwarted a Russian attempt to seize the capital, Kyiv, at the start of the nearly 7-month war. Harry Michaels reporting.
This is the latest news headlines. Payment processor Visa Incorporated said Saturday that it plans to start separately categorizing sales at gun shops, a major win for gun control advocates who say it will help better track suspicious surges of gun sales that could be a prelude to a mass shooting. But the decision by Visa, the world's largest payment processor, will likely provoke gun rights advocates and gun lobbyists who have argued that categorizing gun sales would unfairly flag an industry that most sales do not lead to mass shootings. It joins MasterCard and American Express, which also say they plan to move forward with categorizing gun shop sales. A fiery crash between a tanker truck carrying fuel and a passenger bus Saturday killed at least 18 people in northern Mexico, authorities reported. Prosecutors in the northern border state of Tamaulipas said the crash might have been caused by one of the truck's 2 tank trailers coming loose. The collision left both vehicles completely burned. Police photos showed the bus was reduced to a tangling of smoking, charred metal. A judge blocked the Environmental Protection Agency from appealing a key ruling in a long-running lawsuit claiming negligence by the federal government in Flint's lead-contaminated water in 2014 and 2015. U.S. District Judge Judy Levy ruled in 2020 that Flint residents could sue the EPA. Now, 2 years later, she said she won't put the case on hold to allow the government to appeal that decision to a higher court. Levy said more work must be done by lawyers to develop the case. Most of Oregon is in extreme fire danger as several fires are already burning. Evacuations have been ordered in several regions, and power has been shut off to thousands of customers due to the high fire risk. The largest active fire in the state is the Double Creek, which grew to 41,000 acres overnight, according to the Northwest Interagency Coordination Center, which coordinates wildfire incidents for agencies in Oregon and Washington. And that's the latest news headlines. I'm Alan Edwards.
Hello, everybody. This is Todd Dewey from Ice Road Truckers on the History Channel, and I love to listen to TNC Radio.live.
Hello and welcome, TNC Radio.live. This is Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Corbin. I'm Tom Kelly. We're going to be with you for the next hour talking about all sorts of things, especially as they relate to making ourselves stronger in the 4 inches between our ears. And so, Dr. Cortman, awfully glad to have you with us. We've been off for a couple of weeks. How have you been doing?
I am very well, sir. I just got back from a long walk and I smell awful. My daughter is now in a Christian school, and we were reading some of the King James version of the Bible, and we came to the place where Lazarus had died, and Mary said to Jesus, "Don't go near him. He's been dead for 4 days, and he stinketh." So that is the term in my house for me right now. I stinketh.
Yeah, a little salt water, a little sweat. Got it all going on there, don't you?
It's just really good that it's radio. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, and so far they don't have scratch and sniff radio yet. So it's, however, and I kid you not, they are working on a scratch and sniff computer screen.
Oh, I'll pass on that.
Yeah. There are some different oils that will mix together and create different smells. This is a thing they've been working on in Japan for a while. I was reading about that about a year ago. Could you imagine?
I don't see the reason for it.
I don't either. Other than, hey, I opened that carton of eggs. Smell this. Which, by the way, is one of those pet peeves in my life that I just can't stand when somebody says to me, "Ooh, that's not right. Smell this."
Yeah, this is awful. Here, taste it.
Yeah,
I trust you.
No, go away. I'm not going to smell that. No. So we've been talking about the social black belt, and we've gotten into the discussion. We've learned a lot. Let's see. I guess we've started on strength number 2, or I'm sorry, the truth number 2.
We have. I was so proud of us for finally getting out of the first truth and into the second truth. And we were talking last time about compulsive behaviors. And the second truth is you can control your compulsive behaviors if you change your thoughts and address your problems. And I want to tell you a little story that's fresh from my caseload today about the compulsive behavior of avoidance. And it's one of those compulsions that I think so many of us can relate to. We were just kind of joking together before the show about all these projects that you've been creating but not finishing. And your wife says to you, "Why don't you just grab one of them and see it through to the end?" And you say, "Yeah, I'll be right on that. I'll get that done someday." And the word that comes to mind is avoidance. So I'm going to tell you the story about a guy who's working as a bug man. And it's a business. It's a family business. It's a multi-million-dollar business. And they go and do exactly what you think. You call them and say, "I've got spiders," or "I've got ants," or termites, or whatever it is that you have, and they come and they hopefully eradicate your bug issue. Well, this guy sometimes gets uncomfortable phone calls or demands or requests, and it occurs to him that maybe I won't know what to do or what to recommend or what to say. So you know what he does? He does nothing. And when he does nothing, there's a payoff for that. And the payoff is immediate relief. He feels better because he does not have to address this problem, this issue. And then he moves on with his life. And then the next day, that person may call again, or he has a list of things to do and he sees that and he feels bad all over again. And then, you know what he does to handle that? Again, he avoids. He finds something else to focus on. And little by little, he builds a list, a bunch of things he's not dealing with until His father, who's a superior in the organization, is down on him, and he feels ashamed of himself, and he feels inept and inadequate and frustrated. And what's really sad is that he has the necessary skills to do this, but by now it's a long list and it feels overwhelming, and he's come up with a compulsive behavior for himself, and that behavior is avoidance. And last time, and I wouldn't expect everyone to remember this, but we talked about a kind of a 4-stage predictable pattern for compulsive behaviors. And that is, the first stage in it is you perceive a stressor, something that's challenging or stressful. In this case, it's a call from a potential customer or an existing customer, and that creates something stressful in his mind. Remember, stress is created by the perception of threat. So there's a threat here. And what's the threat? The threat is, I don't know if I have the right answer. I won't know what to charge. I don't really know what this job entails. Whatever it is, it creates stress for him. And then that leads to a second stage of obsessive thinking. He starts to think thoughts like, I can't do this. This is terrible. This is overwhelming. I can't handle this. And that leads to his compulsive behavior, which is the avoidance. And he will do anything to avoid, like find something else to keep him busy, or go out to lunch, or play video games, or anything that's going to distract him from his obsessive thinking and the stressful feelings. And then here's the big key. That leads to short-term relief. Our compulsive behaviors always work to change how we feel. They're short-term, very effective. People will tell you that they smoke cigarettes because it really does work to make them feel better. In the short term, it relaxes them. People will say the same thing. I had a physician tell me today that his whole life he either was drinking vodka or smoking marijuana because those things served to give him short-term relief, because he walks around anxious and telling himself catastrophic thoughts, terrible thoughts about what's likely to happen. So we get short-term relief from all of these compulsive behaviors, Tom. And last week we were naming a million different compulsive behaviors that, anything you can do, even if it's a good thing, you could do it compulsively. You can exercise too much. You could work too much. You could, this probably isn't true for most of the guys listening, but you could have too much sex. You could have too much food. You could have too much sleep. You could even read too much. You could do too much of anything. You could drink too much water, potentially. Compulsive behaviors are ones that we feel driven to do and we're not in control of, and they end up controlling us. We can't stop doing them, but they take on a life of their own. We talked about, 5 different characteristics last time about compulsive behaviors. Number one, they alter your feelings. When you avoid something scary, it does work to make you feel better. You do feel relieved. And they work temporarily is the second characteristic. Compulsive behaviors, don't let anyone ever tell you that they don't work. They do, but they only work short term. And they don't really solve your problems. They just give you some temporary relief. That's why experts have predicted that as long as there's man, there will always be alcohol problems. Because alcohol really does work. It's one of the most effective agents in the world when it comes to reducing anxiety, when it comes to taking the edge off the stress response. Alcohol really works. It's an effective compulsion in the short term. It does change how we feel, but it doesn't work permanently. And so, again, back to the 5 things. They persist despite negative consequences. Your doctor could tell you, You got to quit smoking. You're not going to be here in a year if you keep smoking. But why do you keep smoking? Because these compulsive behaviors, in spite of the negativity, we stay with them because they work. And then the fourth one is they take on a life of their own. And we talked about that last week, that if you started smoking at age 13 because it was cool or made you feel grown up or fit in, that's not why you're smoking at 46. You're smoking at 46 because you're addicted to the nicotine. And it's really hard to stop doing it. It has nothing to do with being cool. It has nothing to do with keeping up with your peers.
This blog on tncradio.live is brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. 6 safety tips for truck driving in hot weather. Driving in the heat can create dangerous situations for truck drivers. Drivers need to take specific precautions before hitting the road in extreme heat. With the incoming heat wave dubbed as a heat dome by the National Weather Service, drivers need to be aware of how to safely drive in these weather conditions. Follow our 6 safety tips for truck driving in hot weather. Every truck driver needs to complete a pre-trip inspection before driving, especially in hot weather. Check tires. Heat can have a huge effect on your tires. As the temperature increases, so does the air pressure in your tires. During the hottest months of the year, it's important to frequently check your tire pressure. Frequently checking on your tires can save you from a blowout. To get an accurate measurement, wait for your tires to cool down before checking the pressure. The heat and friction from the road cause your tires to warm up, which will cause a rise in tire pressure. Also, don't be afraid to take a break every couple of hours to let your tires cool down. While traveling in the summer months, you may want to give yourself some extra time to stop and check on your tires. Protect your engine. Not only should you protect yourself from the heat this summer, but you should also protect your engine. One way to keep your engine from overheating is to frequently check the engine oil. The oil keeps the engine cool and keeps the parts running smoothly. Engine coolant is just as important as engine oil. Coolant helps prevent the engine from overheating in extremely hot temperatures. Keep an eye on the coolant temperature gauge while driving. If the gauge goes above the safe temperature, pull over and see what's going on. Failing to assess the situation could lead to engine failure. Also, make sure to check for leaks in the hoses. A cracked hose could lead to engine failure. Tips to protect yourself from hot weather. It's just as important to protect yourself during extremely hot weather. Follow these steps to keep yourself cool and safe during these hot months. Stock up on water. As the temperature increases, you need to increase your water intake. Make sure to always have water in your truck. You never know when you might get stuck in traffic or break down on the side of the road. Wear sunscreen. Many truck drivers forget this step. Even when you're in your truck, you're still exposed to the harmful UVA rays from the sun. Make sure to put sunscreen on before hitting the road. Wear light-colored clothes. Light-colored clothing reflects light, and dark-colored clothing absorbs it. Wearing light-colored, loose-fitting clothes helps you stay cooler and more comfortable on the road. And be sure to check out our blog, 6 Safety Tips for Truck Driving While Driving in the Rain. This blog on tncradio.live was brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net.
It's Truckers Life Radio from TFC Global with your host, Ron Frazier. Monday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Here we're helping drivers as they travel life's highway. I love that. The spiritual side, drivers face a lot out on the road. Truckers Life Radio digs in on the spiritual and moral questions that drivers face on a daily basis. You don't want to miss it. Every Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Well, that's the wrong music, but hey, you're on the right show, tncradio.live. This is Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Cortman, and sorry about that. I had a little technical problem right before we went to break there. I think we got it resolved, but we'll keep our eye on it. Hate that I had to interrupt you there, Dr. Chris, but sometimes these things happen. You enjoy.
I can deal with the interruption. I don't know if I could deal with the wrong music intro.
I know.
I'm a little bit messed up.
Yeah, it blew everything, didn't it? But we'll get that one right for the next break. So that was the last show for that one. But hey, it's a popular music too. So they just didn't have the finger snapping there going on.
I know. My fingers were useless doing that beat.
Yeah, exactly. All right, pick us back up. Where were we?
All right, so we were talking about 5 characteristics of compulsive behaviors. And this is what we can always take a look at that are true about your compulsive behaviors. Number 1, they do alter your feelings. Number 2, they work temporarily, to make you feel better and get you away from that which is stressful for you. Number 3, they persist despite negative consequences. You stay with that compulsive behavior, even though you may lose your job over it, lose your marriage, lose your kids. The 4th thing is they take on a life of their own. Once you start doing one of these drugs or one of these compulsive behaviors, you end up doing them because they become addictive. They become habit forming and no longer for the original reason. And the 5th thing is they follow predictable patterns. And I just elucidated one of those patterns for you, that you perceive something as stressful, then you have an obsessive thought about it, which leads to a compulsive behavior. We're talking about avoidance as being one of those, which gets you to a temporary relief. It alters your feelings and leads right back to what's going to happen the next time that you have something challenging. We're talking about the bug guy, and we all have challenges in our lives that we can just start avoiding. It could be a project around the house, Tom. It could be something you promised your wife you would take care of. It could be, getting a procedure done, a medical procedure that you just avoid because it's not going to be fun. You need a knee replacement, or, you need surgery on your rotator cuff, or, an ACL injury that you need repaired. It's a big job. And so you just keep avoiding it. And there's a payoff. And what's the payoff? You feel relief every time you avoid something you'd rather not do. And at the same time, there are consequences, and the consequences are, people sometimes lose faith in us. We promised we would quit some kind of behavior, and, the girlfriend or the spouse is counting on us to make that change, and we never do. We just keep avoiding it, kicking the can down the road, so to speak. So, behavior is always understandable when we dig deeply enough into it. We can figure out why we're doing and what we're getting from it. And with compulsive behaviors, there is always a payoff, or we wouldn't do it. The only compulsive behaviors people do, there's a payoff, or, again, they wouldn't do it. So, if we take a look at what do we need to do to change these compulsive behaviors, I guess one of the things I want people to know very simply, there are 3 ways to change how you feel. And it's a luxury to be able to say to somebody, we could boil this down to 3 different ways you can change how you feel. And most of us know this on some level. We will never say it that way, and we'll never carve it up into these 3 categories, but we're aware of this. So I'm going to validate something that most of us know. And the first way to do this, to change how you feel, is biochemically. And biochemically is exactly what you think it is. You change the biochemistry of your brain by drinking something, smoking something, snorting something, shooting something, swallowing something, getting some kind of a chemical up into your brain, in your nervous system, that changes how you feel. There isn't a person in the listening audience that doesn't understand this concept. There isn't a person in the listening audience that hasn't done this at one point in their lives, whether it's prescribed or it's not prescribed. everyone knows that you can have a glass of wine or one beer, when you're first introducing yourself to alcohol, and it already works to start changing how you feel. I mentioned before, experts say as long as there's humans, there will always be drinking problems because alcohol really works. But it's not just alcohol that works. It's anything that changes the biochemistry of the brain. We've had an opioid crisis in this country now for quite some time. There's talk on certain news stations about the illegal fentanyl that comes in from China through Mexico, over the border, etc. And hundreds of thousands of Americans are dying. Why? Why would you even take this stuff? If it's fatal, if it's killing that many people, why would you take it? And there's a simple answer to this. And the answer, Tom, is that it works. It makes people feel differently. It makes them feel better right away. When people take these things, they feel better right away.
Oh, yeah, I got to jump in on this one because I was actually had a medical procedure. Gosh, this was probably 10, 15 years ago. And they gave me fentanyl as a part of that. And I understood instantly why it was addictive. I've never had it since, but I'll take some. I mean, it's amazing. Yeah.
Tom, I'm glad you said that because I was going to relate the same story with a substance called Dilaudid.
Yeah, yes, that's the other one because I had kidney stones. I did that.
Kidney stones, right?
Yeah.
I'm in the emergency room and they shoot some of this stuff up and within seconds, I feel great.
Yeah, it's like, whoa, this is the perfect stuff. I can perfectly understand how you could be addicted to that and nothing flat because, instantly, all the pain, all the fear about the pain, all the stress that goes with it, everything, it's all gone. And on top of that, you feel confident and strong and, let's go home, hon. I feel great.
The first time I had a kidney stone and I didn't know what it was, I just knew the pain was, in the flanks and in the front. And I tried to go to the bathroom and eliminate. And, I didn't know what it was. It just really hurt. And I finally went to the ER. And one of the things they wanted me to do was to pee for them. And it's like, why? And they finally told me, we want to see if you're doing this just faking it to get the drugs. It's like, I'm not faking anything. And when they saw my pee look like Coca-Cola, things like, okay, this guy's for real. He's got an issue. But people actually feign kidney stones so they can get some of these wonderful drugs in their system.
Sure.
And when I say wonderful, you and I both know that the feeling was euphoric.
Yeah.
And no time flat, you're dead because you can't get enough of this stuff.
Sure. So, I also, don't want to ever touch it because I'd get myself in trouble in that one.
Well, it's the same reason I've never smoked crack. I am afraid of this stuff because my fear is I'll like it a lot.
Right.
There's a reason why people trade their souls, every penny they've ever earned. I've heard so many stories about people trading in their mortgage money or their baby formula money or crazy stuff to get their hands on that. They do anything.
Right.
And it must be good stuff. That's all I can conclude, and therefore I'm never going to try.
Exactly.
So that was the first of 3 ways to change how you feel is through biochemistry. Getting something that changes the biochemistry of the brain will change how you feel. Okay, you all knew that, but now we have a name for it. And the second way is through our sensory motor system. And what that means is you can do anything like run, jump, scream, cry, express feelings, run 5 miles, do deep breathing, relaxation, yoga, play basketball, do 50 push-ups. I mean, anything like that will change how you feel. And honestly, it's one of the first things I'd ever recommend to somebody in a crappy mood is go for a walk. Just come on, get up, let's go for a walk. Let's jump in the pool, let's get on the bike. Do something active, because that definitely and often instantaneously changes how you feel. But the third way, Tom, is the most permanent way, and it's the most long-term effective way, meaning that when we really do this well, it not only changes how we feel temporarily, it changes how we feel permanently, and that is to change how we think about something. And it's absolutely vital sometimes, if we want to be well, to change our thinking about something. And, you know, lots of times we can see this, or we'll hear stories about this. There's a local baseball coach who takes his team every other year down to someplace like Dominican Republic. And on one hand, he brings them there because they have the best baseball in the world. And on the other hand, he takes them there because a lot of these kids don't even have anything but dirt floors. And they don't have toys, and they don't have real bats, and they don't have, you know, they're poor. They're poor people in a third world country. And so he's bringing them there for all kinds of reasons, including, I want you guys to have a different perspective on your life. I want you to have a gratitude where right now there's just entitlement. I want you to have a sense of compassion where right now you think you've got things coming to you or you deserve them. I want you to know that you're not better than others, but you have been blessed, and that you have things that you will be required to use for the betterment of others. You know, to whom much is given, much will be expected, is the biblical phrase. And so what he's trying to do, besides make them more mature and better ball players, is to make them better humans. And that's by exposing them to things that hopefully will change their thinking. You know, the thinking is the key. The thinking is that which governs the nervous system. And if you want to feel differently in your life, it's almost always going to come back to thinking differently.
That makes sense. Tell you what, let's take a break and check in with our sponsors, and we'll come back in just a couple of minutes. You're listening to TNCRadio.live. Stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Dr. Christopher Cortman, and now for the Mental Health Minute. I am impressed by how many times people are hurt by unkind words that are said not only to their faces sometimes, but very often in social media. People complain to me about things that make them feel so bad about themselves or so ashamed. And I'll ask them, is this true? What was said about you? And very often they'll say no. So I have a rule with them that says, before you own anything, how about try it on? Let's consider it to be like shopping for a prom dress. If it doesn't fit, put it back on the rack. Don't wear it. In fact, to quote the great philosopher Taylor Swift, sometimes when you try some things on, you just have to shake it off. I like the kids to know, try it on. If it doesn't fit, shake it off. Try it on, shake it off. Try it on, shake it off. Don't wear anything that doesn't belong to you. It belongs to somebody else. Let them wear it. But wait a minute. Stop the shaking. What if the criticism fits? In that case, be brave enough to wear it, and then change it if it needs changing. And then shake it off again.
It's Landline Now, followed by Steve Summers' Overnight Drive every night on TNCRadio.live starting at 11 p.m. Eastern and 10 p.m. Central.
There we are. That's the right music. Welcome back in TNCRadio.live. I'm Tom Kelly along with Dr. Christopher Cortman. This is Building Strong Minds. So, Dr. Cortman, let's kind of bring this home a little bit. So let me pick one here. Okay. I told you before about a woman I know who, and this has been especially bad since COVID hit, who has been washing her hands so much that, what do you call the area around the fingernail?
Yeah, the cuticle.
The cuticle, yeah. It's on all of her fingers, broken and bleeding, and she's in pain. But it does not stop her from having to wash her hands. Somebody told me that she told them like 20 or 30 times a day she's washing her hands. I don't know if that's true, but that's pretty compulsive if that's true.
Wow. Well, that's a great question, and I really appreciate the question. And I want to respond to it by saying this is a symptom of obsessive compulsive behavior. This is somebody who not only has a compulsive behavior like you're noting, but it's full-blown OCD, which impacts approximately 1% of the population. And it's a very stubborn kind of disorder, very challenging to treat. But there are two really prominent components to the treatment, which is cognitive behavioral in nature. And that is exposure and response prevention. And so exposure is she has to face what it is she's afraid of. And she is disallowed with the response prevention. She's disallowed to wash her hands. And so this is most likely treated effectively in a treatment program or in some type of family setting where she is not allowed to do what she wants to do. Because if she's left to her own devices, so to speak, she's going to wash her hands. She's not going to have the self-control to do that. In a program, she's not going to have access to the sink/bathroom except for normal times of the day, like right before or after lunch, for instance. You know, the humans are supposed to wash their hands, but not 300 times a day, not 50 times a day. You know, we're supposed to wash our hands after we go to the bathroom. We're supposed to wash our hands before we eat, wash our hands when we get in some nasty stuff, wash our hands if we shake hands with other people. You know, there are normal times to wash hands, but when you have a compulsion like this one, when you have obsessive behavior like this, it goes way beyond. And that's why her skin is wearing off. And that's why, you know, again, I've seen this before when people's hands are just completely discolored from excessive, like abusive washing. I mean, they're doing it not to hurt themselves, but they're doing it to be clean enough because the anxiety is so high. So, you know, what she needs, she's probably not going to be able to get unless there's a support system around her and a willingness on her part to subject herself to that kind of control, Tom, because, you know, if she's in a program, she's not going to the bathroom. She's not allowed to go to the bathroom. The bathroom is just locked and she can't go until she's allowed to go, so to speak. And then she's going to have to do things. I believe I said on a show weeks ago that I had this young guy and I made him put his hands in all kinds of dirt and wouldn't let him wash his hands. And then I gave him an apple or a cookie or something to eat, but he had to eat it with his dirty OCD hands. And it was a dilemma for him because he definitely wanted to eat the cookie or the apple, but he certainly wanted to wash his hands. He didn't want his hands all over that. But it was a good technique because by putting your hands in dirt, you're not going to be killing yourself in any way. But when you have that kind of disorder, you want clean hands and you want to wash them and wash them and wash them. And, he wasn't allowed to. So she would have to do something like that. And it would take some time, and it would take, it would probably take a residential program to address that. That's, you need insurance or you need money, you need time to do it. It's not the easiest thing to do, and it's very difficult to pull off as an outpatient because you need the cooperation of people who will prevent that response from recurring. You're not allowed to wash your hands. Just leave it to the person who lives alone, and they'll say, whatever, I'm going to wash my hands. I have to wash my hands. And then they can't stop when they're washing them. So it's I hope that answers your question. It's a very difficult thing to pull off unless you have a treatment team, if you will, around you.
Sure. Well, what about just something like quitting smoking? He says as he coughs through the question.
Yeah, I like that. That's very good sound effects.
Yeah, I just did that on purpose to make my point clear. A lot of people
go into radio.
Yeah, I should. Yeah, a lot of people struggle with quitting smoking, and I don't think. And like you said earlier, non-smokers look at smokers and say, "What's that guy's problem? Just quit."
Yeah. Well, again, in today's world, people want to quit because it is not deemed to be a socially desirable thing to do, at least not in the United States anymore. Not only that, but there's no place to do it. There's no place to do it. I don't know if you ever drive around and you find a smoker hiding in the corner somewhere behind a building, and you just sort of feel sorry for them. They have to feel like they're so pathetic because they're not allowed to do it anywhere. There's signs everywhere you go that disallow. So
yeah, but as recently as 15 years ago, that's if you wanted to be really in touch with a lot of people, all having a smoke break and getting together every couple of hours and trading gossip and all that was the great place to do it. And a lot of companies said, well, we can't make you go outside, so we're going to give you a smoke room. And boy, you learn anything about the company you wanted to learn if you visited the smoke room once an hour.
Yep. And that has changed dramatically. And they did some beautiful things to decrease smoking. And one of the most effective things they did, besides giving you no place to do it, was they raised the prices and the taxes on it to the point where you have to be a wealthy person to buy a carton of cigarettes. I mean, it used to be so cheap. People would, give them out in high school. I remember that. It was nothing to bum a cigarette off your friends for those people who smoked. But now, sometimes I see the cost of cigarettes, and I think, wow, that's every day? That's crazy.
Just to tell you how much the world has changed, when I was in junior high school, not just high school, junior high school, you could smoke between classes if you had a note from your mom. There was a smoking place for the kids.
Wow. Yeah, imagine that today. Now, if you even smoke in the car and there's a kid in the car, people would look at you and give you the worst and dirtiest looks, like, what kind of a parent are you? But anyway, how do people quit smoking? The first thing I would want people to understand is that nicotine is a nasty drug in terms of its addictive aspects. And Big Tobacco knew that before the rest of us did. And that's how they were manipulating smokers. I mean, they knew they had a product here that was not only legal and not only socially acceptable, and they were giving it out to our military free, as a way to say, thank you, boys, for going over there and defending us. Here you go. Here's your free cigarettes. But they wanted people to be addicted to these things from early ages. So they marketed the children, of course. There's a lot about Joe Camel that was a direct manipulation designed to suck our children into the whole tobacco world. But then they would deliberately increase the levels of nicotine so that people would get addicted and quickly and seriously addicted. So, there is such a thing as a social smoker, but most of the time, not so much, because it's one of those things that either you do or you don't. Because if you don't, you can stay away from it. But if you do, once you start, it's like you don't control it, it controls you. So here's another really interesting fact about nicotine. Your body actually needs it, but it only needs it for about 4.5 days. Meaning if you could stop smoking for 5 straight days, if you don't touch a cigarette, you literally break the body's need to have the drug. And therefore what? Therefore, the rest of it is a head game. And that's easier than it used to be because people are not smoking around you all the time, typically. There's not all the opportunities there used to be to smoke like there used to be. It's easier to hang out with people who don't smoke than ever before because most of the country doesn't smoke. I mean, the rates went down to from near 50% of adults down to something like, 15%. It just continues to decrease. So what do we do with that? We put together a plan on how we can stay away from smoking. And that could be done cold turkey, or it can be done by gradually weaning. It's okay to smoke 5 cigarettes less tomorrow than you did today and so forth, and just give your body less and less nicotine and choose a quit date and tell everybody that you're quitting and have everybody help you. And this is the day I'll have my last cigarette, and then we're going to celebrate. And then I'm not going to have them anywhere around me. There's a whole psychological plan to put together. The more you involve other people, the better your chances, because there's so much at stake if you go back. There's the shame and embarrassment of failure. And if all these people are pulling for you, and they will, as a team, it's easier and better to get this done. People are much more likely to stop drinking, stop smoking, whatever, if they have a support group. If we ask the same thing about drinking, I would definitely say get involved in some kind of a support group. AA is extremely effective to the people who work the program. And not only to stop drinking, but to change their entire way of thinking and living, because it's not a program just about changing drinking. It's a program about changing how we live and how we look at the world, from our spirituality to our relationships with others. Everything changes, when you submit yourself to a program for change like that. So if you ask me how to change a compulsive behavior, I'm always going to recommend, don't do this alone. Somebody else has done it. Get all the support and all the help you can get, because our chances increase drastically when we have somebody on our team. And the more supportive people that love you, who are pulling for you, the better your chances of succeeding.
Sure, that makes sense. All right, well, I tell you what, my compulsive behaviors, I've got to take us to commercial every few minutes, and that's what time it is now. And so I'm going to go do that, and we'll be back. We're going to wrap up this episode of Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Cortman. Stay right there.
Being on the road can make you feel free, excited, and adventurous. It can also make you feel lonely and even depressed. So it's important for truckers, especially long-haul truck drivers, to bring items on the road to keep them entertained. Truckers have 10 hours off for a 24-hour day. Depending on how long the driver sleeps, there can be several hours where the trucker has nothing to do. We've broken down the list of essential items to keep in your truck in several different categories. The second category we talk about is entertainment. Laptop or tablet. Bring a laptop or tablet and stream your favorite movies or TV shows. If you don't have access to Wi-Fi or a personal hotspot, you can still bring your laptop, some DVDs, and watch a movie. Game console. Playing games is a great way to keep yourself entertained. You can also play with your friends. Bring your Xbox or PlayStation and set up your own gaming station in the cab of your truck. Puzzles, crosswords, or cards. If gaming or watching movies don't interest you, bring some puzzles or crosswords to solve. You can also get a deck of cards and play games like Solitaire, March Same Rank, Devil's Grip, Klondike. Books. Reading books is a great way to pass time and improve brain connectivity. Some popular trucker books include The Highway by C.J. Box, Blue Highways by William Least Heat Moon, Paradise Valley by C.J. Box, Rough Way to the Highway by Kelly Mac McCoy. Exercise equipment. Truck drivers' health suffers from the lack of exercise. Bringing exercise equipment on the road will keep you entertained and improve your overall well-being. There's several portable exercise equipment items you can store in the cab of your truck. They include dumbbells, resistance bands, kettlebells, and running shoes.
Hey, rideshare drivers and gig economy workers, the host of TNCRadio.live, the Rideshare Rodeo Podcast, and the Gig Economy Podcast come together for news, talk, music, stories, laughs, and more. We're live Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, right here on TNCRadio.live. Welcome back in TNC Radio.live. This is the final segment of tonight's episode of Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Cortman. And Dr. Chris, thank you so much. It's been very enlightening as always. Before we wrap up, tell us real quick, how can people find your book, and what's the best book to be reading at this point? Should they buy Social Black Belt, or is there something else they should buy? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the more they buy, the sooner I can retire. And I figure I've got this whole thing down to 15 years after I'm dead, I'll be able to retire. That's what my financial guy told me. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
So there's two books that are particular to this topic of the Social Black Belt. One is appropriately called The Social Black Belt, and that was co-written by a gentleman named Michael Keelan, and that was written with an adolescent population in mind. It's very well written. He's quite a good writer and an English teacher. But the original book that was written for adults with adult examples is called Your Mind, an Owner's Manual for a Better Life, and features the 10 truths of the Social Black Belt. We are talking about the second truth today, and they can get these books on Amazon, or they can, srqshrink.com is the way to get to me. They can always call me. They can send me emails or texts, or I'm always happy to respond to people from all over the country. So, happy to talk to people, happy to meet them and to talk about any specific issue. So I hope that's a good answer to your question.
Very good. Thank you. We got about 4 minutes left. How do you want to wrap the show up tonight?
was thinking over the break about a patient who came in because her husband had a compulsive behavior called gambling. And she worked tirelessly as a nurse, and he would take that hard-earned money and gamble it away. And it wasn't that he was a bad person or an immoral person. It was that he had become addicted, compulsive, if you will, about his gambling. He couldn't stop his gambling. And that gambling became something that he knew was destroying his family. So the way he explained it, because I invited him in for a session, he said, I'm not going to do this very long. Back then we had the dog tracks in town. I think I have it figured out as to how to win this. And when I win this, I'm going to be able to pay off all the debts that I've accumulated. And then I'm going to stop. And I found that so fascinating. And I even said to him, your perceived cure is actually the disease. You're planning on curing this by getting deeper into the disease. And that was how he saw it. So his thinking was really so polluted, he couldn't see that he was destroying and getting the family into deeper debt, because there was going to be this time when his ship would come in, so to speak. And in the meantime, every week he would take his family down the trail of debt deeper and deeper and deeper. And so how do you stop that? Well, I would recommend, and I did recommend at the time, you go to, Gamblers Anonymous, and you start, and you stop the compulsive gambling, and you turn your life over to your higher power and your group, and you get some individual therapy help, or you stay on the track you're on, because you're right, you're going to win one day, and meanwhile, it culminates in divorce, and it culminates into homelessness, and it culminates in him, destroying his own life, and all those things, I believe, happened because he didn't want that help. He wanted to win this thing. He wanted to have that big payoff that would somehow justify the years of spending. A very sad thing, but I don't want to end on a sad note as much as I want to say there's always hope out there. Any addiction, any disorder, any compulsive behavior is treatable today, but more than likely you're not going to do it by yourself. We don't usually make those kinds of changes alone. And it's every bit as okay to reach out to a mental health professional as it is to reach out to a plumber. If you run out of skills after the first pipe, relax. You don't know everything about plumbing and you need some help, it's okay. And don't do your own shoulder surgery, and don't do your own law work. It's okay to get an attorney. It's okay to get a physician. It's okay to get a psychologist, and it's okay to get a support group. Ask for help, because there's help. In today's world, there's more help than ever before. So I want to encourage people. You might have a compulsive behavior, but it can be addressed through the help of others.
Fantastic. Well, it is time for us to sign off for the evening. Appreciate it. We're going to be back next week. We're going to tackle truth number 3.
Yes.
All right. You've been listening to TNC Radio.live. I'm Tom Kelly. I'm Tom Kelly. I'm Tom Kelly. I'm Tom Kelly. I'm Tom Kelly.